Hello, everyone, and welcome to Navigating Vendor Selection and AI Tools for Proposals. My name is Georgia, and I'm the Content Manager at AutogenAI. In today's webinar, industry leaders Chip Schaller, who is Chief of Capture and Proposals at AutogenAI, Chris Bassila, CEO and Managing Director at Hovester Advisory Group, and Douglas Gardner, Proposal Development Team Manager at SpryPoint, will share practical advice and insights on how to choose the right vendor for AI-powered proposal writing software. During the webinar, the Q&A box will be open for you to submit your questions, which will be answered at the end. And with that, I'm going to hand over to our host, Chris.
Thanks, Georgia. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Chris Bassila. Just a quick introduction on myself. I'm the managing director of Hovester Advisory Group, where we help organizations transform their bid and proposal operations to be more efficient and impactful. And so for the last 20 years, I worked in complex industries like aerospace and defense, including roles at the world's largest pilot training and simulation company, and also a top 3 aircraft manufacturer. And I'm really, really excited to be here today to talk about how to navigate the landscape of AI tools and vendor for proposals. I get asked a lot of questions about that for the last, I don't know how long. So this webinar is quite unique because we have the opportunity to talk to someone on the vendor side as well as on the buyer side, and to get their understanding, their perspective, their vantage point. So this is really, really exciting for me. And as Georgia mentioned, I'm joined by 2 gentlemen that I have tremendous respect for, Chip and Doug. Let's start with you, Chip. You've had an impressive 30-year career in capture and business development. But about 1.5 years ago, you made a leap and joined AutogenAI as Chief Capture and Proposal for America. My question is, what made you decide to make that shift? And can you tell us a little bit about your current role at AutogenAI, what it involves, and how it differs from your previous work?
Yeah, sure. And thanks for that question. I also want to say that I'm really excited to be here to talk about this topic today. I mean, this is something that the 3 of us have been nerding out on for quite some time. And it's always a really interesting topic of discussion to understand how people evaluate and ultimately use AI to support them in their proposal processes. I think what led me to where I am right now, why I made that leap, if you will, is because I was in the same boat as a proposal center director a few years ago, where I had the challenges of having to meet efficiency requirements, bring down cost, improve quality at Pink Team. There was a lot of pressures that the center was experiencing from our internal clients, very high expectations, but we had a limited team of resources by which to deliver them. And to be honest, when we started looking for solutions, we started looking at technology, but I really had no idea what generative AI was, what LLMs were, or even how you could apply artificial intelligence AI into a proposals environment. And so we evaluated a few, and it wasn't really until I came across AutogenAI and met Sean Williams, who's our current CEO, that I was really sold on the idea. I think the best way, or at least the way I describe it to people, is when I first saw what the system could do, I thought it was absolute magic. And the thing that came through the most for me when talking to folks at AutogenAI was the intentionality of the product. It was built by proposal people for proposal people. It was optimized for proposal development. And so I could immediately see the value of that product in meeting the challenges I was experiencing in my day-to-day life. And so I know that sounds a bit like a sales pitch, but it's absolutely true. And just the ability to see how I could generate more text more quickly at a higher quality, using the same number of staff that I currently have, it was a real game changer for us. As far as my current role, I'm Chief of Capture Proposals for AutogenAI, and that gives me sort of this unique internal-external focus in my day-to-day responsibilities. So sure, as the name belies, some of what I do is I'm responsible for developing, for the overseeing and participating and directing the development of our own internal proposals, working with proposal teams, managing proposal content, using proposal systems, doing all those things I normally would have done in my past life. But the other side of this is, and the part that I find the most interesting and the most rewarding, is to work cross-functionally across our sales team, our product development team, as well as our customer success team. And it really, there is a thread that runs through all of that, which is that it's all client focused, but it's just expressed differently in different ways, depending on where I'm engaging in that process. On the sales side, and I will probably talk about this a little bit later, but on the sales side, I'm working with the sales team to really think about demos and what's most impactful when we're doing a demo, and where our clients can benefit the most from what we're trying to present to them, in terms of understanding where we can bring true value and not bury them in, a bunch of functions and capabilities. On the product side, because I get to spend a lot of time talking to prospects and I get a lot of time talking to clients, and then I'm just out there in the industry talking to folks like you, Chris. I get perspectives and I have understanding about what industry wants, what they need, what the way the system needs to support them in their day-to-day activities. And so I bring that back to product. And in fact, we did 2 back-to-back hackathons back in December, specifically focused on things that we recognized were true needs that weren't being delivered elsewhere. And then lastly, customer success. And I think this is where I'm really most excited about what I do, because I get to really nerd out on the proposal topics, is that I support them on understanding proposal process, but specifically as we use that in creating role-based training. And so talking to our clients, talking to individuals in different roles, understanding what they're doing, how they need to use the technology, how the technology needs to support them in being successful. That's where I engage. And I think that's where I get a lot of value, because I really get to explore some of those topics that are nearest and dearest to my heart. So thanks.
That's awesome. Thanks for the introduction, Chip. I mean, a couple of things that resonate with me is the magic. I also had that aha moment when I first put my hat on ChatGPT back in November 2022, I think. I thought it was the greatest thing. And also the demos. This is something I definitely want to circle back with you on in a couple of minutes. But before we do that, I want to turn to Doug and get your perspective, Doug, and your introduction. So your journey has been pretty remarkable. I know that you've flown for both the Royal Air Force and the Royal Canadian Air Force. Not bad. And you've led the charge on winning some pretty big deals in the defense industry specifically. You and I met a while ago. And you've recently switched gears, and now you're working at a very fast growing SaaS company. Can you connect the dots for us from the cockpit and to the proposal world, and what led you to your current role? If you can expand on that to give people a perspective, it'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so I spent 15 years in the military as a helicopter pilot, either side of the Atlantic, like you say. And then moved to Halifax on the East Coast, decided to get a real job, and moved into the defense industry, where I very quickly was kind of steered into proposal management as a vehicle to see the heart, the inside of a business, and that was nearly 10 years ago. So I kind of became an accidental proposal manager, if you like, because it was supposed to be the start, but I've enjoyed it, found a niche, and here I am. So I was indoctrinated into the Shipley way of thinking, which came quite naturally, because all the military stuff is transferable. Those operations jobs where you make a plan, somebody breaks the plan, you fix the plan, and then all the time you're trying to convince somebody that these are the best ideas available. It's all very, very transferable stuff. The defense industry versus SaaS is an interesting one. Huge deal sizes, either B2B or government in defense, high complexity, sometimes taking months and months and months, versus where I am at a fast growing SaaS company where it's high frequency, it's productized. So it's I've seen the range of different potential applications, and I'm here to somewhat represent the buyer's journey as much as I can. Having worked with you, Chris, in the last year or so on scoping what's in the industry, looking at how we make evaluations, how do you even sort of start looking at the market? How do you start working out what do I need? People are quite happy to say, I need AI, I want it now. In particular, the application in proposals is highly compelling because it fits with large language model technology very closely, far more closely than a number of other applications. And you can see the amount of manual tasks that are involved in traditional proposal management that are a rich ground for increasing your tech stack and taking those manual tasks away and automating so that you can use your people for far more strategically important things. So in both the defense and in SaaS, I took a look at the market, and there are very different use cases, very different needs. Compliance being a huge one. And as this discussion continues, we'll look into some of the factors around what I've been looking for, how I've been looking for it, and maybe a bit of advice for people who are doing the same.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks for the setting the stage for us, Doug. So remember, Doug, when you first reached out to me a while ago, you were looking to, for help finding the right AI tool for your organization. But I remember also very vividly that our conversation quickly shifted to looking at like pain points and processes before selecting a tool. So from your perspective, right, from a buyer's perspective, why is it so important to start analyzing processes first rather than jumping straight into tool selection?
Yeah, so if you take the sort of 10,000-foot view of the market, it's the vendors at the top are already starting to homogenize to some degree. The application is becoming sort of more clear where the optimizations are. There's a lot of nuance between providers, don't get me wrong, but in terms of the core problem set that they're solving, they're pretty similar. There are different focuses, obviously, with different products, depending on what your business structure is and where you are looking to optimize, how restricted you are in your choices, all of those kind of factors. But what I think about is almost immediately, it becomes clear that there is some new cost beyond financial that comes with getting a new tool. This is not a negative. This is just a residual reality of changing the way that your business functions. So the very frequent new cost tends to be around data management, because we've gone from a SharePoint-like, not very organized set of previous proposals and data libraries that people kind of just get familiar with and they know where to hunt around for stuff. Yeah. Maybe there's a search function there that's not particularly good, to one where all of that is automated and the content is writing itself. But what is it writing it from? We know the restrictions on LLMs. So you've got to manage the data sets that they're looking at to make sure they're up to date and they're managed. Now, do you have a data management team in proposals, or do you have proposal managers, and proposal specialists? So are you set up for whatever the new residual cost or impact is? Where, as much as it's easy to get excited about all of the manual tasks that are going to be taken away, you have to look at what is the landscape going to look like once a tool has been integrated and implemented. Do you actually have the right people to manage it? Do you want to do that? Do you want to be a business that has a data management department? Now, a lot of the tools have some internal self-managing features, which is great, and more and more I'm seeing more and more self-managing features. I think as the market starts to recognize this as a persistent new problem. But you very quickly go from, I like this product, I want it, to, okay, what are the consequences of introducing it? So you very, very quickly have to zoom right out and have a look at your whole business and say, okay, I want a one-for-one swap mechanical tasks for automated tasks. Okay, great. So what? What does it look like afterwards? What do we need to do? Are we set up for it? And really, that might mean that you don't necessarily want to choose the product that is the absolute best at this manual to automated task set. You might pick one that is 95% of the way there, but it's got excellent data management, for example. You got to look at the whole picture. So as soon as you start looking into it, you have to look broader at the total impact, benefit, and cost to the business.
Yeah, I love those questions, Doug. I mean, we can talk for hours, but a few things I want to say is around the data. I've been a big proponent of data hygiene, good data quality, and content management, especially in the realm of AI, because it is consuming. This is your input, right? If it's your input is no good, then your output is no good. But you're also raising a lot of interesting question and dilemma around, taking the best tool versus taking the best tool over kind of a life cycle cost and transformational needs of the organization, the capability. So those are really great questions to ask, I feel like. And so Chip, so then let me turn to you from a tools perspective. When engaging with client, working with client, how do you ensure that the technology, I want to say fits seamlessly. I know it never does fit seamlessly, but kind of minimal disruption with respect to the existing processes. And how do you make sure that the tool that you're providing, that capability enhances the workflow rather than disrupt it? As Doug was saying, there's a lot of implications on the back end of the implementation. So I'd love to have your thought on that.
Yeah, sure. And I think probably this is the most critical topic out of all of them, which is understanding. For me, this is really, there's all kinds of challenges, and they're all really wrapped up under a bigger umbrella of change management. That could be how you manage your data, how you manage your people, how you manage your processes, all can be potentially impacted by the implementation of AI technology into your proposal process. So again, I want to start back with this sort of theme that that's always in the back of my mind, which is intentionality. So when we think about how we're going to work with a prospect or ultimately a client, and when we think about how our tools will be implemented there and how they'll be supportive of their process, the one thing that we want to ensure is that, one, they're not disruptive. Two, that they don't require a tremendous amount of change on their part. And three, that we're looking for the best ways to adapt those tools, to adapt our tool to their current environment. Now, we can talk a little bit more about how we engage with them if they don't have process, sure. But I think that the way we really think about this generally is that it's about a 7-step kind of process. One is that I want to emphasize that discovery really starts with our sales process. So by the time we get to a late stage demo, when we're really honing in on, is this the right fit for me? The prospect making that decision, we are able to have discussions with them and show functionality that is specifically tooled and tailored to their unique need. And so we're working together to make sure that the tool is actually fully applicable to their current environment and ways of doing things. I think the other thing that's really important for us, is that we are defining the success metrics early. This is going to serve both parties all the way through implementation, ultimately into ongoing operations. But I think at the beginning, as long as we're agreeing on what success looks like and how we're going to understand success, how we're going to measure success, and then how we're going to communicate success, it's absolutely critical to bringing those systems in, implementing in the way that's the least disruptive and the most complementary to the way things are currently happening. Then coming back to this idea of intentionality, we're intentionally implementing and training. So I talked earlier about role-based training. That's being intentional about how we see the application of the product within the operational environment. We don't want to just plop the AutogenAI on a company and just say, good luck, see you later. We want to make sure that you understand how it works, how you're going to use this in your day-to-day jobs, how it's going to make you successful, ultimately how we're going to achieve all the things that we promise that we can do for you and around efficiency, cost savings, and increased win rates. So you have to be very intentional about how you do that, how you engage with that client, how you do the training. Then communicating the why. I think there's another thing, and this is a challenge that I've experienced elsewhere. If you are not effectively communicating why you've made the decision to buy this product or why you've made the decision to implement this technology, and making sure that everybody understands that why, you'll get pushback and you'll have problems with implementation ultimately. I've made the mistake, so I know firsthand that communicating that why is really crucial. And then getting ongoing feedback and doing continuous improvement. So what I would say about this is that I want the bad news as well as the good news. The good news is great. We expect that there will be good news. But if something's not working, it means there's a problem with the product fit. It means there's a problem with the training. And so, we have an opportunity to look and fine tune both of those again to make sure that what we're implementing is specifically tooled and tailored to the unique needs of the client that we're working with. And then coming back to the metrics, we're continually tracking and sharing these success metrics. This falls in line too with looking at the ongoing feedback and making sure that we're really clear about what our experience is. We need to understand what everybody's feedback is. We need to be looking at metrics, and we need to be determining whether or not we're meeting those targets and those objectives are being achieved. The last thing I'll say is that I think everybody needs to understand AI as a journey. It's not a one-time fix. Again, we're not just plopping a product down into a proposal center and saying, good luck. This is a journey, mostly because AI itself as a supportive tool is evolving rapidly. I know our own product evolves rapidly. And so we have to be engaged in that kind of relationship with our clients to make sure that everybody is working together for shared success. So I think that's kind of how I think about ensuring that it's not disruptive. It's not a one kind of thing. It's really a cross-functional commitment to the success of the individual client.
Yeah, it sounds like you've mapped out also your own customer journey. Not only, I see that a lot where it's an engagement on, you get on a call quickly, it turns into a demo, and then, you kind of miss all the other pieces, right? Where you're talking about customer success, that customer journey, the onboarding, the training, because I think fundamentally what's different, and that took me a while to kind of wrap my head around, is this AI is a disruptive technology for people, for processes, for workflows, for culture. And so if you don't help, your client, your customer walk that journey, it becomes harder. The adoption is going to drop. You're going to have a lot of churn, and it doesn't serve anybody's purpose, right? Before I jump to the next question, I do encourage folks who's listening in, if they can drop in questions. Would love to make this interactive, maybe leave some time at the end. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat or the Q&A box, and we'll address them later on. But I do want to go back to demos, something that I felt a lot of heartburn over the last year and a half. So Doug, from your perspective, I know you've been on that journey as well of looking for tools. And so please, if you can give us what was your experience working with vendors and going through demos? And I'll turn to Chip afterwards about demos, but how did that process help you narrow down your choices, or did it? So, can you give us an overview of your experience, and if that was helpful, or if there's any insight you can share with our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know how many I saw, but it was a lot. It's very exciting. It's an exciting bit of technology. Everyone's really keen to show you what they've got, and really sort of it's really easy to get yourself in front of a bunch of demos and see a load of stuff. So I encourage people to go and do that. Even when you've got a short list in mind, you say you've seen five or six, and you're like, oh, I think I like this one and this one. You'll be amazed by someone else will come along, and in the last 2 minutes of the demo, they'll show you a feature that is absolutely perfect for your business. So don't discount any corner of the market, I would say. Everyone's kind of finding their feet, I think. So it's broad. Take the time. Something else you can do to help you out is use of consultants and people with experience. People like Chris here who've seen a huge bunch of demos. And when I worked with you, Chris, what was great was that you had already, through some discovery calls between us, got an idea of which segment of the market makes sense. I still saw a lot of demos, but you can accelerate the first stage of selection, at least, if not more. And be guided through, what to ask during those demo sessions. Which bits of the tool do you want to interrogate? So I'd encourage people to reach out to Chris if they want to see what that looks like. Chris really accelerated where I was on that journey. I'd say debrief wide and deep in your business. Everyone's got their kind of view of what we're looking for, and I want to pick up on what Chris was saying about, let's just buy AI and plop it in, see what happens. There are people who have that kind of view. They're like, there's this part of the process. I just want it to go away. I hate it. It takes forever. It's boring. You know, it requires a huge amount of vigilance. I want to get rid of it. I've spoken to a number of businesses that have done the plot, early adopters, and it's great. It achieves what they want. You know, they say, look, I need this bit of the process to get faster and cheaper and more automation. It does that. I think they're missing out. So you use the demos to really explore what's available on the market and what is a good fit for you. I'll quickly touch on some advice for vendors as well, I would say, because it's the other side of that.
Love to hear that. I'd love to hear that.
Everyone wants to show you every single button on their application, right? I'm going to share screens. How many buttons can I click in half an hour, right? That tends to be, and I totally get the enthusiasm and the need for that. My advice would be to spend a minute to ask potential customers in 1 minute, explain to me what your workflow is. You can probably eliminate half of the features at that point, because a lot of the tools are looking at a fairly broad audience. Makes a lot of sense. You want to have a deep market, but no customer is going to use every single one of your tools maximally all the time. It's probably not realistic unless you deliberately hyper specialized in a certain niche. So that just, you know, if anything, it just means you're not sweating at 25 minutes into a 30-minute demonstration going, oh my God, I've got 50 features still to show. And try and pick out their key pain points. Maybe start at what are the big wins? What are the big automated wins that we can do? And then maybe in either additional sessions or whatever it might be, dig into scratch the surface on some of the details there. Yeah, so that'll be my kind of my advice to the vendors for sure.
I love that, Doug. That got me chuckled quite a bit actually, because I've seen this scene way too many times. And I promised before we got on that I put Chip, put the vendor on the hot seat here. And so, so Chip, I understand that you support the sales team with demos and customer engagement. So my question to you is simple. How do you balance showing off all the capabilities of an AI tool without overwhelming potential clients during the demos, right? Can you share some insight into discovery process? Because it's so tempting, you know, from a you know, a technology vendor, you're like, I've developed all these cool things. Let me show you how to do this and that and the other, right? So I'd like, you know, it's a two-part. So how do you balance off capabilities versus value? And, you know, can you share some insight into your discovery process? How do you typically bring them on the journey when you're at that point?
Yeah, and hopefully it'll be very complementary to what Doug is saying, because yeah, I've had the same observation, and I've learned in many ways the hard way that yeah, you don't want to show every feature and function, and the other side of that is the customer doesn't want to be interviewed necessarily, right? They're interested in seeing what you have to offer and then making their own determination as to whether or not that's the best fit for them. And so I will say that demos are an an often discussed topic within our organization. And I've struggled with it, you know, personally, only because I'm used to doing things from a proposal perspective where you're tailoring and tooling an orals presentation to a specific requirement. But that's not how this works, right? So people are out evaluating tools and they're looking to see almost immediately whether or not it's going to bring value to them. And I think the way Doug has outlined it makes the most sense, which is you do a quick bit of discovery on the front end, but you should already have a view as to what you think the client will benefit the most from in your product. And I would go right to that. I would demonstrate that. And if there's further interest, then I would schedule a follow-up call where we can really get into the functionality. Or I might even suggest, if you do a second demo, that the second demo should be really tailored to specific needs. And again, not focus on every feature, function, and capability, because I agree, it can become very overwhelming. And Doug's point about process is really important as well. One of the things that has always frustrated me when I was in the buyer side is that I couldn't see myself in the product. So therefore, I couldn't see where my process was reflected in what was being demonstrated. And that is something I really feel is important to do no matter what, especially for proposal people, because we are process people at heart. We see everything from a process perspective. And if I can't see how your tool supports my process in a non-disruptive way, then I'm really not going to be interested in what you have to offer me. So I think we have to get to that point really quickly. And then, there is always the possibility for that mic drop moment where we show that one feature that really makes the difference. And I think that's the other thing that we should always be striving for, because that's where what we have to offer is truly connecting with what they're looking to purchase. And then we can go from there. But I think that's kind of how I would approach it. But again, yeah, this is something that's really discussed at great length. So don't think vendors aren't paying attention to this. I think it's hard to figure out just what the right thing to do is. The other thing I would point out is that every client is unique. And so sometimes they come in with this expectation that what we demonstrate to them, they want to see it quickly, they want to understand it quickly. But then there's other times where they really want to have those conversations. And, sometimes it's a bit of therapy while we're working through some of the issues that they're trying to deal with in their own everyday environment. So, they're all different, but I think that there's a general approach that can be applied here. And I think, the way Doug sees it as a buyer is really the way we should be looking at it as a vendor.
Absolutely. And is there any one big misconception that clients have about AI tools during the sales process, and how do you address it? Sometimes I get that, I've done many of those as well.
Just one?
Yeah, just one.
This is why it's a tough question, Doug, because I asked it to pick only one. Chip, anything you can point to,
Yeah, I would say, usually the questions are, opposite ends of the spectrum, right? So either there is a keen expectation that there's this one magic button that you push, right? So the RFP gets ingested, somehow magically a proposal outline gets created. Then all of a sudden you have a fully written, red team ready proposal, and it's been plunked down into fully formatted, stylized, customer ready copy. Or the other side of that perspective is like, I don't believe your tool can do any of what you say you can do. And so it's like you have to work on both sides of the spectrum. I do think that the unrealistic expectation that that AI in particular does everything in a real automated fashion is probably the one though that we deal with the most. And that's where, from our perspective, we look at it this way. Our tool is designed to be augmentative. It's not meant to be replacing. It's meant to enhance the capabilities of the people that interact with it. It's meant to support the business development lifecycle and to shorten and make less onerous those parts of the process that just really eat into the creative aspects of proposaling. And so, I don't think you would want an AI tool that would do all these things in an automated fashion that would really, the final product would be absent of your personality or your specific inputs to the storytelling or to the strategy. And so that's, I think, where we want people to understand is that, yeah, we could probably do all those things. And there are things that we do now with our product that do create more of an automated type approach to, say, proposal outline development. But that's just doing the outline, right? Or that's supporting the compliance review. Those are important pieces. But the real part where you want to really leverage the talent and capability of your proposal team is around storytelling. It's around reflecting the client in the proposal. It's about being able to reflect that those hot buttons are being achieved. It's the stuff that we people live for, and that's not lost when you apply AI. You're just able to get to it more quickly, and I think that's the right way to look at it.
Yeah, that's great insight, Chip. I hope I was able to get you on every demo call that I get from different vendors. But you're fully employed by Autogen. We talked about tools. We talked about processes. What I'd like to now turn is a key component of this is the implementation. And I want to start with you, Doug, because your perspective is very unique because you work both on very complex, like defense type bids, right? And and on the other hand, right now, it sounds like you're working on sort of high volume, low complexity bid in a SaaS environment, software as a service, a technology company. How do the processes, for managing these different types of proposals compare when it comes to implementing new tools or technology, can you give us some insight in, comparing and contrasting these, opposite end of the spectrum? And I guess companies, would fall somewhere in between, but if you give us the edge points, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, so I'll pick some sort of edge cases. So a larger defense company takes the pain, to use shifty terms, getting to pink team. So from starting with 40 people on a kickoff call that probably cost about $3,000 or $4,000, just to have people meet up and say hi, to get to the point where you have a drafted proposal with a bullet point level. This is how we're responding to this stuff. That takes probably the most manual time that's best suited to AI tools, in my opinion. There's lots of variants, but this would be an avatar, I would suggest. Those companies, I would suggest, need to look at, obviously, compliance tools, and then look at them in terms of reducing cost, increasing efficiency in that very specific period of the process. I say that because it's probably least disruptive. I mean, Chip's spoken about disruption for these tools a few times. It's an important comment. I imagine most of those potential customers are going to be less resilient to a large change. Certainly, they've got risk money to manage that is orders of magnitude higher than a small SaaS company, for example. So probably segmenting the solution and layering the tech stack in that manner probably makes the most sense for them. On the other side of the scale, in SaaS, it's been very exciting. In the space of a few months, we can go from having startup mentality, best effort, let's all just sort of get stuck in and get things done, to building a brand new tech stack, brand new integrations, brand new processes across the business, and everyone just adopts those within the matter of a couple of weeks. You have you just tell people this is what we're doing, train people a bit. There's a bump in the road the first time you do it, and then you're off to the races, because everyone's in that kind of startup mindset, and you're small enough that you can do that. So the size of the company and their legacy environment or not needs to be taken into account. I suppose the other thing is, where is the company taking risk? And if you've got a high volume, your risk and you're productized and you're smaller, adding a couple of subject matter experts to a bid will hugely increase the cost to you. You also, those people are less available. You're probably taking 2 SMEs from a team of 5 rather than 2 from a team of 40, for example. So there are a number of sort of cost benefits that where the ratios are just totally different at a small startup. So for all of those reasons, the implementation and the processes need to match what your objectives are, that need to fit the business. So I'll just go back to some of the early points I was making, and we zoom out even further. Once you've got excited about replacing manual tasks with automated tasks, the other thing that you probably need to do is say, how far out can I zoom? If we're a big defense integrator and we only take very strategic, very deliberate market adjacent opportunities that make sense to us because it's so costly to go after these things, can we get a tool that allows us to go over to increase our scope in the market because it's cheaper? Maybe our P-win goes down, but who cares? If our P-win times internal costs gives us a better benefit at the end, maybe we rethink how our entire business approaches the market. Maybe that reshapes your sales. Maybe you have a whole bunch of junior salespeople now going after way less likely deals, or maybe you expand your business scope into less adjacent areas because you can bid on that, and then you can build the business after you start winning those things. And the same applies for SaaS in the opposite direction, or small business in the opposite direction. How far out can you zoom with your strategic thinking to say, okay, back to the topic, which is implementation. When we implement this, what are the biggest order impacts to the business, and what level of disruption can we accept to maximize this? So you end up with a scale from I'm just going to automate a thing I don't like doing, to we've completely restructured our business because we've got the market's way more open to us than it used to be.
So it sounds like what you're talking about, Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, is moving from the tactical gains to more of a strategic, reshaping your business development and your sales culture or strategy around that, right? So the tools allow you to do that because of the step change and efficiency that you eventually get, right? So that opens up some avenues that you didn't think about before, right?
It does, and you start by saying, what kind of business are we? What can we accept? And I'm caricaturing a big defense business with a startup SaaS, but I think they're useful avatars for the discussion. Like, what kind of business are we? How much disruption can we take? And then in that frame, look at the biggest possible strategic impacts of a successful implementation, and then approach your entire implementation plan from that vantage point.
That's very interesting, very unique. I've never heard that kind of view before, but that's really helpful. Chip, from your experience, the other side of the coin of this is of the implementation is kind of the adoption curve. When implementing AI tools for complex versus low complexity, high volume, or perhaps like across different industries or size. So how do you see that adoption, and is there something to be said about maybe tricks or suggestions about when you're implementing for different type of environment? Anything you can share based on your experience? You've done this now for a while.
Yeah, sure. I can speak to all of that. I wanted to just real quickly say two things, because what Doug was saying in the previous answer really resonated. What we're finding, and this has been a real surprise to me as I explore sort of the use case and where industry is going with the use of AI in their proposal development, is this they are focusing more on left of RFP activities. That's everything from strategy to development, competitor analysis, market analysis, customer understanding, evaluating competitor proposals. If you're in a state and local market, there's all kinds of applications that can create different points of view and different bidding strategies that are equally as informing to the writing process, but not in the ways that we had originally envisioned. And so that's really exciting actually about where we see the market going. And I think we're spending a lot of time thinking about those processes, those challenges, and those needs at AutogenAI and trying to prepare for that. Because I would say in the majority of the demos that I've been sitting on recently, that's the focus. That's the focus. Right. The other thing I'll say, and this kind of fits into the question you're asking me about the adoption curve, is that I know we talk about disruption, and I wanted to sort of create a definition for disruption that is in relative terms, right? So we know as proposal people, disruption can happen from a variety of things. You could rename a pink team first review and create a tremendous amount of disruption just because you're monkeying around with the process, right? And so, or like we want to adopt an agile approach to proposal development as opposed to a more traditional standard approach. That creates a disruption. So I would say because it's so process-driven, proposals can look at almost anything as a disruption. And so I don't want the word necessarily to be a pejorative. It's just something that we need to be aware of. And again, sort of change management is really foundational to how we do this, because at the end of the day, and I think this is a shared truth with proposals, is that proposal teams are made up of people. And so it's the people dynamic that really colors or defines what the process is going to be like, how the implementation is going to go, and that all needs to be accounted for. So from that perspective, when you look at sort of the complexity of bids, I would say that the challenges are probably the same. One of the things that we've tried to do intentionally is to make sure that our product is adaptable regardless of the type of enterprise that is adopting it, so that we're able to support the needs of small community not-for-profits that are doing grant-based proposals, all the way up to supporting multinational enterprise, which have really defined processes and work in very complex ways. And then there's these mid-level enterprises that deal with both in simplicity and complexity in the types of deals that they're required to give. I would say the challenge is that working within all of those places, the challenge becomes like, how can we adapt the tool to meet those specific needs? The other side of that is that everybody's view of the tool or view of how the tool is going to fit into their environment, I think is the same. Everybody believes that their deal is the most complex or it's unique to their specific environment, right? And so it's difficult then to come at that with this understanding that it's a one size fits all kind of model, even if the underlying capability is sort of foundationally the same for all enterprise. So we kind of have to recognize that, and this is what I talked about at the very beginning, the uniqueness of the prospect, the uniqueness of the client, the uniqueness of their operating environments really drives the way we do things at implementation and working towards adoption. So change management needs to be front and center to all your decision making. And the other thing, and I've failed to mention this before, I think, and when I talk to customer success, the one thing they say to me, it is imperative to make a plan. So we need to make a plan about how we're going to be implementing. And I think Doug has been speaking to this quite eloquently, which is like, you need to understand the intended purpose. And it may not be that particular feature. There's other reasons that you might want to adopt this. And so, what may be the most attractive might not be the most compelling. So you need to understand what you're using the technology for. You need to make a plan for its implementation. You need to be intentional about the change management aspects. You need to understand that there are people involved. You need to understand that companies believe that their proposals, regardless of who they're for or the level of effort, are highly complex and require unique solutions. And I think if you can keep all those things in line, that will help with adoption. That will help with adoption, regardless of the size of the company or the teams that you're trying to implement it on, and keeping intentionality, keeping the fact that we need to be focused on roles and how roles will be interacting with the software at the center of all those activities is where you're going to get the highest level of adoption. And of course, I've said before, we're going to be tracking the metrics associated with what success looks like all along, so that we'll be able to have a scorecard as to how successful we're being in that process.
Yeah. So many questions I want to ask, Chip, but I'm looking at the time and I see that I want to leave time for Q&A. But despite the fact that we spoke for hours before that, before today, we still have really engaging conversations. So let me turn to the questions, and then we'll wrap it up at the end. We have about 10 minutes left. So I'll read the question here. So the first one is, and if anyone else has questions, please pop them in. Talk about how the vendors help organizations who don't know what they need discover what tools can help them address. It seems like people don't know what they don't know in order to ask a question in terms of what tools can help them improve. That's a very intricate question. Maybe you can fill that, Chip. How do you help organizations?
Yeah, well, actually, I think the question makes a lot of sense, because I think everybody knows that this may be an overstatement, but I don't think so. I think everybody knows that they want to get AI, right? I think that they know that they feel it's imperative that they have AI, that they're implementing it. There are a lot of competitors out there with a lot of products. Some of them are very similar, some are very different. And the decision making around that is very challenging. We've talked to companies that are very curious about what government is doing and wanting to match whatever solution they pick to what government is doing. And that makes sense to me, because they think that it's going to give them advantages both on the compliance and the evaluation side. So I think for my recommendation would be, and I think we say this corporately, which is expose yourself to as many products as possible. But the most important thing at the end of the day is that you don't want to get left behind. You don't want to be overcome by your competition that is adopting AI capability into the proposal process. So it's important that you make the decision. So don't get overcome or paralyzed by the choices out there. Select one that makes sense and go with it. And the terms of those contracts should allow you to do that in ways that are beneficial to your organization, so that you can make the determination as to whether or not this is going to be the right fit for you. I think that most companies will find, if they've committed to the implementation, if they've committed to the product, and if they're communicating the reason for wanting to implement those, they'll get a lot of success out of the tools that they select. Um, but I think that's kind of the best way to look at it, which is, they're going to have to make a decision, and they shouldn't be paralyzed by that decision. And as we've talked about already at great length, spend that time during the demo process to make sure that the tool itself is complementary to your own process needs, will fit within your organization's culture, is adaptable to the way you do things, either from a gate review perspective or a capture perspective, or just how it supports proposal writing. And then make that determination, but don't wait. You need to make the determination, otherwise you're going to get left behind.
That's great, great answer. Doug, I know this is was a more vendor question, but is there anything you want to add to?
It's actually both. So for me, I completely agree with everything Chip just said. Is highly insightful. Just to sort of layer onto that, I mean, the questioner is presumably from the buyer side. So drive the bus on it, would be my advice. Don't, there are the likes of Chris available, consultants available. Chris is excellent to be able to help guide you with, some discovery sessions and some ways of, analyzing your business and seeing where you are. Just start. Get moving. You're going to end up with a layered tech stack, which has a proposal AI tool as part of it. If you're nervous about it, you're not sure, take advantage of the time that we're in right now, where the marketplace is accelerating in its competitiveness. Have a little talk to vendors about pricing in the demo. They're frequently not particularly clear because everyone's still trying to work it out. They're very variable or very flexible to the size of your business and your business needs. So if you say, hey, give me indicative pricing, they may not be able to give it to you because they're prepared to be flexible. So if you can identify a slice of your business operations and a slice of your tech stack where you can find a good fit, building on what Chip was saying, negotiate a licensing period that makes sense for you. Get started, but don't expect that to be the first one and only choice that you make. Maybe you nail it and you hit it out of the park and you buy the absolute best application for you, at which point you can start moving horizontally towards the features that Chip was talking about, like, pre-RFP, CRM type features or whatever, or analysis features, whatever they might be. Or you can say, look, now I understand this environment. I reject this tool. I'm going to go back to the market. I'm going to go and find another one. But at some point, whether you do that internally, whether you lean on vendors, or I think what is probably wise is to lean on people like Chris to accelerate that, is to get started, identify, big things that you want to change, big mechanical operations that you want to change, fit it into your business, and then take an action item to review in a year and see what comes out of that. I don't think you'll be disappointed.
That's great advice, Doug. Thank you. I'll jump to the next question and think we'll only take one more question. I think this one's for you, Chip. Aside from content generation, what are some ways that the tools can help support other aspects of the process that aren't getting talked about? I mean, you mentioned, left of the RFP and all that, but maybe you can give a bit more color on that. I think that's what the question is asking.
Yeah, I mean, I think where we see the technology going and where we can really leverage AI to its maximum advantage is around some of the bid, no bid decision making, some of the opportunity selection decision making, just doing some of the basic analysis around competitor advantage, disadvantage. Even if you are, I was thinking about this the other day. I used to work in a state and local environment where we were able to FOIA a lot of competitor proposals. If that's an environment where you're in, and that is consistent and legal with your procurement laws, I would FOIA as much as you can and drop it into your system and see what kind of analysis you can do off of that. It really helps you to understand the bidding strategies of those that you're up against. I think we can do that kind of analysis around government agencies, certainly looking at their strategic documents and seeing where they're going organizationally. It will help color those your approach to the hot button issues in a more substantive way. You can get to the real core of, what's driving the decision making, or even looking at doing some analysis around agency buying habits. I mean, sometimes the old-fashioned way of having to do this is going back and having to look historically at the award records, right? And those aren't always obvious. But if we can figure out how to connect up to those through available tools and then leverage the AI capability in order to do the analysis, we can make some decision making around what these contracting officers tend to do relative to how they make their decisions, and whether or not that advantages or disadvantages us in this competition. So yeah, there's a tremendous amount of application. I think we're only limited by our own lack of creativity in how we can leverage the capability to support us on bid preparation activities. And then I think one of the things that we're also looking at is how can then all that information that you're gathering pre-RFP, that P-win analysis that comes after it, how is that then useful to you throughout the writing process? How does that support you in your strategy development? How does that support you in your narrative development and your storytelling? And then all the way through to the end, I think there's definitely AI application in how we do proposal closeout, lessons learned, contracts management, contracts documentation management, and then leveraging that information on the front end in order to inform that decision-making process all the way through the bid narrative process to award and then back. So we've got a nice circle of support that's leveraging the AI capability all the way through and is fully supportive of the business development lifecycle as we understand it today.
Yeah, I know firsthand there's a lot of opportunities on that journey lifecycle of the BD lifecycle, and maybe it'll be a topic for another webinar. Just to close out and wrap up, Chip, if people are interested in learning more about how AutogenAI can help streamline their proposal processes, what's the best way to reach you or connect with you? Where are you most active? How they can get a hold of you?
I think everybody can easily find me on LinkedIn. I'm out there, Chip Schaller with AutogenAI. Otherwise, I'm always available via email, chip.schaller, and it's SCHALLER at AutogenAI.com.
Perfect. Thank you. And Doug, I know you've been very, very generous of your time today. I know you're very busy, you have other things to do, but you accepted to join us today. I think both of us share a common goal of supporting the community. We're very excited and very passionate about AI and tools in general. So for anyone who wants to tap into your wealth of experience or has any more questions about navigating different environment and vendors, what's the best way to reach you? Where was your go-to?
LinkedIn's the best. Please, just direct message me on there. I'll get back to people. I'll be in the comments wherever that's posted as well. More than happy to talk to people who are at whatever stage of the buyer's journey to see if there's some benefit I can give. Always happy to talk about it. I'll talk about this and tell people.
I know you will.
It's really important stuff. We're really at the nexus of some huge efficiencies in the business. So LinkedIn, please.
Thank you.